Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creative Juices. Today's guest is George Boot, who is responsible for demand generation over at NomuPay. But actually, once I got talking to George, I very quickly realised he's got his fingers in all sorts of pies. He's also supporting a local golf academy, FGA Golf Academy up at Delapre. And we have another guest, ladies and gentlemen, who at the start of the conversation probably wouldn't have deemed themselves a creative. And I think by the time we got to the end, George was with me in saying, he is. He absolutely is. So George does everything from videography. He's a marketer and he's very passionate about personal branding as well. It's a great conversation, one that I really enjoyed. And I hope you enjoy it too. Cue the episode. Welcome to the podcast, George.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
George in front of me. I've got George behind me on the video camera, so at least I'm not going to get your name wrong. So, George, we don't actually know each other very well at all. No. And I've had a couple of instances where we've had people on the pod that I don't know, but you're probably the person I know the least. So we're really going to get to know you a bit more over the next hour or so. Don't know whether, I think you've watched a couple of the episodes, haven't you?
I have,
Ryan's.
yes. Yeah.
So we typically start with earliest memories of being creative. So if we go right back to, say, you as a child, do you have any distinctive memories of thinking, oh, this is creative, or people telling you were creative or highlighting anything about you that would fit into that?
I knew this question was coming and I had to actually rack my brains to kind of think about when I was creative or how I was, or like you say, if anybody ever told me that I was creative. Yeah. And I think I actually don't see myself as a creative person today, which is what I think we're going to get into. And I think it's really interesting. Because as a kid, I wasn't creative and I still don't see myself as that now. Yeah. I was a very sporty kid. I just wanted to play football. I wasn't very academic throughout school. I wasn't very good at school. Yeah. And outside of school, it was just sport for me. It was football. It was kicking the ball around the house. It was doing so many other things and getting told off by my parents. And creativity is not something that came naturally to me. Yeah. It was something that in today's world, I feel like I have to consciously make a decision to try to be creative. But the way I've got around that, I feel, is I just try and document a lot of my life versus actually try and sit there with a blank piece of paper and just create things, because that's the hardest thing for me. I can't sit there and with a blank piece of paper and say, what am I going to write on LinkedIn this week? Yeah. I find it really, really difficult. Yeah. With the help of AI, that's been a godsend for me.
AI, what do I write on LinkedIn this week?
But AI has given me a platform and the ability to actually have a conversation with a computer. It might sound really crazy, but actually have a conversation with a computer around what's in my head. I've got the thoughts, I've got the things, and I'll just sit there and reel it off. Yeah. So creativity doesn't come naturally to me. Yeah. Interesting. But it's something that people may view as I'm creative, but I'm really not.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And we're going to talk through your career in a little bit more detail. But like, obviously, I've been having a look at your content over the last couple of weeks. I've been looking at some of the businesses that you're involved in, and knowing that you're behind a lot of what I'm seeing, you clearly are creative. Okay. But everyone who's been on the podcast, I think bar maybe Cardi, who's quite clearly very creative, has had that sort of like, oh, well, I don't really think I am. And Aaron maybe is another exception because he's a designer. Yes. And you cut him in half and he's in design, or Aaron, maybe Photoshop, I don't know, but he's a design tool. So the majority of the people we've sat down with have said exactly the same. We were talking about Ryan earlier. Yes. And you say, me and Ryan maybe are quite similar, because Ryan didn't see himself that way. He was the same, obsessed with sport, obsessed with football. Yeah. So there was sports creative though, isn't it? So other than football, like what did you play? Was you big on golf?
Honestly, big on golf, but I've only been big on golf over the last, I'd say, 5 years.
Oh, and he's a 3 handicap. You made me sick, George.
But honestly,
you made me sick.
3 years, 5 years is what I've been playing for. Yeah. But 3 years is where I felt like the creativity to the golf has come, which is through the FGA side. So the golf academy that I'm associated with. So taking that brand, and golf's something that I feel like you can be creative around. Yeah. But the B2B element of side, which we'll get into in a moment, which is what I do as a corporate career, is very, very different. And you have to have two very different sets of mindsets. But there's still a very big, similarity between the two, which is one of them is I'm still documenting what the coaches are doing. Yeah. So a coach all of the coaches at the FGA, they're not creative people either.
Yeah.
But what they are is incredible coaches.
Yeah.
So how do we actually capture them being incredible coaches, get that into CapCut, put some fancy captions on it, and get it on Instagram?
Yeah. Shout out to CapCut.
Shout out to
That's
CapCut.
my preference
Brilliant.
as well. George's probably crying in the corner, but I'm like,
he's like
CapCut
Premiere Pro,
all
Premiere
day
Pro.
long. CapCut all day long for us novices.
But it's true, and I think in the B2B side, you can very often try to be creative, but actually then come across as like you're trying to sell something to someone.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a very, very fine line in that.
Yeah, that's 100%. So true. Well, we're not going to go too heavily into like golf coaching, because we'll talk about the academy a little bit later. But I think coaching is really creative. Having coached myself, I did some hockey coaching, and when you're hanging on a Saturday morning and you've got a coach under 11s how to play hockey, you got to find some creativity. And I was like, something. Oh my God, like what am I going to do with them today that requires as little effort from me as possible and as big output for them as possible. So I think coaches are, it's just probably, we talked a little bit about this with Vanessa, who came on, who runs Indie Local, but it's just not deemed as like traditional creativity. Like I always say, haven't got a paintbrush in hand. They're not, creating music. They're not, but it is, you're taking someone and going, right, you're just doing that, so let me show you. And for every person you coach, you maybe have to think of different ways to. So this is why I love this topic, because there's just so many ways.
But what does creativity mean?
It's basically, if you actually look at the definitions, it's technically creating something original.
Okay.
But there's a lot of argument nowadays over what is actually original.
Yeah.
So for me, I think creativity is like how we express our skills. Like, I think my accountant is really creative. I've said that loads of times, because she just like does these things with spreadsheets, and I'm like, what on earth? Sales, which we'll probably get into a little bit, super creative, because you have to read a person, you have to be good at knowing how to engage with different people. So I just think it's quite easy to pigeonhole creativity into like traditional forms that we've been taught, like art, music, dance, those kind of things. But I think in 2024, there's lots of different ways we can express it.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that a little bit. But so really sporty as a kid.
Yep.
When you say not good at school, were you like naughty, or were you just not academically?
Didn't enjoy it.
Okay, yeah.
I just didn't enjoy school. It was something that there was one topic I enjoyed, and that was PE.
Yeah.
I enjoyed going to school when I knew I had PE that day, but when I had maths, English, and every other topic, I was like, I really don't want to go to school today.
Yeah.
And I think as I've developed into my adult career, I've started to, look into the things like ADHD, ADD, all that kind of stuff. And I think as I look back into my school times, I think that very much resonates with what I do now, which is I will switch off if I'm not interested.
Yeah, okay.
I just will. I won't pay any attention to it. And that's down to that's not just academic, that's not just learning new topics, it's relationships with people. Yeah. It's all of it. And going through my career, I've realized that I will put 110% into something that I really want to understand, but 0 into something that I don't want to understand.
Yeah.
And whether I don't know whether that's just a me thing, or is it something that everybody experiences.
I think there's a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people that really struggle with that. Whereas even if I'm not interested, I seem to have this ability to just still get it done. Because, I'm not every day in my working life is like super stimulating.
Yes.
We've all got things we have to do that we don't like doing, but I don't think I struggle as much as, say, somebody maybe like yourself who would be like, no, it's boring, I don't want to do it. Whereas I'll like grind through it. I won't enjoy it, but I'll get it done.
Yeah, so the school side of things was I just didn't really enjoy going to school. And it was then when I really started, I obviously had a passion for sports, so that's what took me into college.
Yeah.
So it took me into college at Tresham in Corby, and that's when I studied sports and stuff like that, and sports coaching, sports science, and went down that route. But that was really to play football. That's what that was to do. It was a scholarship, and I had to have some form of education on the side of it. Yeah. So I'd play football as a scholarship. We'd travel about the country and play football, and then I'd have to do that as an academic side so that they could support the football. But I think one of the biggest turning points that I'd like to talk about during that time was what I did outside of college, which was that was where. So going back to a little bit about my childhood and about my parents, I think that's quite interesting. So my parents are split.
Okay.
So I'm fortunate enough to have incredible step parents as well at the same time. But my mum is very different to my dad in a way that my mum's incredibly impulsive and opportunistic and incredibly like, let's go do it. Yeah. My dad's very much of a realist. Yeah. And I feel like having those two perspectives growing up very much set and sets who I am now. But during the time I was at college, I actually lived with my mum.
Yeah.
And during that time, I wanted to start looking. She was a salesperson through and through. So that's I think where I get it from.
Yeah.
I get her kind of opportunistic side. I get her people skills. She used to tell me at school. Used to tell me throughout school when I was not very good at it that I was emotionally intelligent. I think that was just to make me sound a bit better next to my sister, who was very academic. And I was like, okay, great. So, so taking that emotional side, throughout college, I wanted to make some money outside of it. And what I did was I chose to join, I think it was Herbalife at the time. Now, Herbalife, for anybody that knows Herbalife, is a multi-level marketing program, right? Everybody brands it as a pyramid scheme, this, that, and the other. So I'm going to go into that because it's something that not many people know about me, know about my career, or any. It's actually the first time I'm probably talking about this. I haven't heard that brand
for years. Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah. So I did that. Now, one thing that actually did for me, I lost friends, relationships, all sorts of stuff over that.
Wow.
That taught me a huge amount of rejection and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that today is why I couldn't care what anybody thinks about me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think I'm able to take people and say, right, well, this is how we're going to build your brand. This is how we're going to do certain things. This is why I'm here today talking about this, because I don't really care what people have to say about this.
Yeah.
It's more, how do I tell the world who I am and what I'm about?
Yeah.
And it's just how I've chosen to do it.
Yeah.
But that was a big stable point, not the college, not the football, but what I did outside of that, which was the constant fear of failure, the rejection, you're part of a scheme, you're this, you're that, was just a constant battering ram of your confidence, you're this, you're that.
That's hard.
And it was really difficult. And then that's, I think, what's took me into the sales element, because, you know, I wouldn't say I'm money motivated by any degree.
Yeah.
But, you know, my mum was always in sales. It was things like managing your own diary. It was being able to pick your kids up from school.
Yeah.
All those things I wanted as a kid.
Yeah. Flexibility as well
exactly.
can be big in sales. Yeah.
So that then is what took me into sales, which I'm sure we'll get into now.
Yeah. So Herbalife, just to go back, because that's a blast from the past for me. I think I don't know whether I got approached or God knows why, because I wasn't very out there as a youngster really. But remind me, what was it that you were selling? What was
it was like health products.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was health products. Yeah, so it was your shakes, it was whatever it might be, and you would post it on social media and all that kind of stuff, and then I'd get a load of hate from that, and it was just that is what really built like resilience in me, and was like. Failing forward, that's when I started to do a lot of personal development, because bloody hell I had to at the time. It was a case of I'd listen to all the, you know, the law of attraction stuff, all that kind of stuff growing up. And I think that's what's made me who I am today. And that was a key turning point. And then from college, I then went into, why did I go out there? I then went and got a first job, which was at Barclaycard at the time, which was just a telephony sales role. So I was calling
everyone in Northampton's
everyone's worked there,
haven't they?
Yeah, and they had me twice. They had the luxury of having me twice. I went back there. But so from the first one, it was a telephony sales role. So again, that was my first real exposure to sales and being on a sales floor, and people, when they'd make a sale, run up to the board and put a you know, a dash on the board saying one for me, you know,
suckers.
Your turn, suckers, your turn. I did that for about 9 months, and then from there, I left, and that was when my dad started Beer Gorilla on Wellingborough Road here in Northampton, which is Northampton's first craft beer bottle shop.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
As a shameless plug.
Shout out to George's dad. What's your dad's name?
Matt.
Matt Boot. By the way, the surname, I'm here for it. I'm so here for it.
But, you know, so I went and worked with him. He was working at Barclaycard at the time as well, and wanted to go and start something for himself. He's always wanted his own business. So I kind of took the reins with him on that. We went and did that. And that was kind of my first exposure to, right, okay, well, we need to actually take this brand and do something with it.
Yeah.
We need to we've got a small business. We've got the first of a small business.
Yeah.
So how do we now take this onto social media? How do we brand it? How do we do whatever we need to do? So I did that for 3 years. And then I went to Australia, did a bit of traveling, went and saw some family for about 6 months. And then I come back and got another job at Barclaycard, which was a step up in the sales process. So rather than doing the telephony sales, it was more of a mid-corporate sales role where I would actually have a portfolio of customers, and I would try and go and win bigger deals. It would be a longer sales cycle. And I did that for about 18 months. That was my first exposure, which we'll get into in a minute, of the traditional ways of selling don't work. Which is the cold calls, the cold emails, everything that I talk about now on my content. That was my first exposure to, there's got to be a better way to do this. I then had a stint, I then had Trust Payments when I come back from Australia, which is an account manager role. Did that for 6 months. Then I had that Barclaycard role. And then the one after that was Truvo Payments, which is a Maltese-based acquiring bank.
Yeah.
Again, just another salesperson. That's all you were in the chain.
Yeah.
Trying to sell to European businesses in the traditional ways, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to bang on that door up saying this stuff just doesn't work. Rejection. And then from there, I was made redundant there after 12 months. And then I joined acquired.com, which is where I met Justin and Grant.
Yeah.
I started there as an SDR because I was made redundant. I had no bargaining power. I had nothing. So I had to take a role that was available. Took that. Really, that was when I actually backed myself and said to Justin, look, there's better ways to do this.
Yeah.
Let me try it. And throughout this time of this, when I was a salesperson, I was posting on LinkedIn. I've been posting on LinkedIn for about 4.5 years.
Yeah.
So I'd been getting leads from LinkedIn. So I know this stuff works through a personal brand element. So I was a case of, right, well, Justin and Grant, give me your profiles. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we started to develop their profiles, and now we're getting into the B2B sales cycle side of things, but we're going to get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a bit more detail. I want to ask you a question about just going back to Beer Gorilla. I was going to say as well, don't forget your tea, drink your tea. A lot of people come on podcasts and then there's drink there and they're like, don't touch it, you help yourself. What do you think, having not had any marketing experience before and not had any branding experience, what do you think where was the switch when you sort of realised, okay, we actually need to market this business? And was it just intuition, or I know you said you'd done a lot of reading and done a lot of personal development, but where do you think that came from?
I think it comes back to something that I even still incredibly value today, and even the history books will tell you it's so important, which is people's attention. And I think when you look at where people's attention is, that's where you need to be as a brand.
Yeah.
Previously, it was newspapers, it was TV, it was the yellow pages. Now it's social media.
Yellow pages.
Now it's social media.
Yeah.
And if you're not on social media today, let alone 5 years ago or 8 years ago when you started that business, you were lost.
Yeah.
So it was a way, I knew we had to be on it. And I posted about this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, which is I always used to tell my dad that we need to put ourselves out of business every day. So if another Beer Gorilla or another beer bar was to open right next door, if they were to do something that was going to put us out of business, we have to do it first.
Yeah.
So whether that might be, I don't know, a tap takeover or whatever it might be, a partner with a social media influencer, do all of those things, because what's the worst that can happen? They won't work.
Yeah.
And that's my just opinion on things. Back to that rejection piece. If it fails, it fails. Crack on with the next one.
Prime example. Right? We've just gone through that ourselves literally yesterday, where you have to fail. You have to fail. You have to. We've tried something, and I will go into a bit more detail about what it is over the next couple of weeks. I'm a bit sad that it hasn't worked, to be honest. But we've been working on an idea for ages about how we can sort of show people what we do on businesses that we don't currently work with. So a bit more guerrilla, if that's the word you want to use, a bit more bold in how we go, hey, this is what we do. And the first business we've tried it with doesn't want us to share it. And I'm like, damn. But I'll go into more detail there. But you're spot on. What's the worst that can happen? We've tried it. We've done something different that I don't see many other agencies locally even trying. And it hasn't worked in the first instance. So we'll take the feedback, we'll evolve it, and we'll go again. But at least if you're the first one to do it, or if you're the only one doing it, you can say, well, we've tried and we're putting our head out there. Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's that fail forward mindset. It's a case of try something. If it doesn't work, you're only going to learn something. You're only going to try something again. And so to your point of what may have failed yesterday, they may regret that decision come 6 months and ask you to do it again. Who knows? I'm still a bit sad, but I'm fine. We're moving on. So you've then gone from sort of working with Dad and then back into sales in sort of the payment space. Now, for anyone who doesn't really understand what these businesses are, can you just give us, let's go with NomuPay. Is that right? Yeah, I've said it right. Yep.
I'm really, really making sure I say it right. Justin and, is it Grant?
Justin and Grant. Yeah.
They'll be listening. They will. Yeah, I'm very aware that they'll be watching this. So give us just, because that's the role one of the roles that you're currently in.
Yes.
What do NomuPay do for people?
So NomuPay are a global acquirer. So essentially, if you want to take payments, so let me just give you a brief overview of what a payment business does.
Perfect. Yeah.
So a payment business is anybody that provides a payment service provider. So if you wanted to integrate, the simplest way to put it is when you type your card details in on a website to pay for something, or you press Apple Pay, Klarna, or whatever it might be, those buttons are hosted by a tech provider.
Right. Yeah.
They're not hosted by Shopify, essentially, to keep things simple. if you're built on a Shopify site.
Yeah.
So you need a third-party provider to come in and basically build that for you.
Okay.
So payments businesses allow people to accept payments over the phone through a website via a POS terminal, so a point of sale terminal or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So NomuPay do that kind of globally.
Okay.
To keep things really simple.
Yeah, that's perfect. And what's your role at NomuPay?
So my role is demand generation manager. So to cut that short, again, going back to the sales days, this is where all this now ties in.
Yeah.
So during my time in sales, I, was making the cold calls, I was doing the cold emailing, I was doing the campaigns, I was doing whatever it takes to fighting for someone's attention, which is what we're all fighting for all the time. As marketing agencies, as salespeople, we need someone to pay attention to us, to sell them anything. So, but that just didn't work. It still doesn't. It didn't work 10 years ago, to be frank. I mean, I've never bought anything from a cold call. I'm not sure whether you have.
No.
No.
Don't think I have.
Cold email, maybe. But that cold email has to come at the right time, with the right message, with the right tone, and normally from someone you're aware of already.
It's not really cold, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started to explore this notion of demand generation, which again I think is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but it's more of what does it take for a brand to market themselves in 2024 and moving forward.
Yeah.
So demand generation is essentially so you've got 100 customers that you want to go after.
Yeah.
At any one point, maybe 1 to 3% of them are actually ready to buy a product that you have.
Yeah.
But you getting hold of those people is hard, difficult, and you're completely cold.
Yeah.
So demand generation essentially is how do you take that 1 to 2%, identify that they're in market, and basically show them who you are without selling to them.
Yeah.
So creating content, creating podcasts, talking to their ICPs on your podcast, repurposing the clips.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. What's an ICP? Just for anyone that doesn't know.
Ideal customer profile.
Thank you very much. Just checking, because there's going to be people listening going, what?
Yeah. So you take your ideal customer profile
and
you find other ideal customer profiles that are willing to come on your podcast, talk to them, leverage their brand, leverage their story, because you're not always the expert in their industry.
Yeah, so true.
Because payments is something that every business needs to take payments. A marketing agency takes them, a Shopify brand takes them, whatever it might be, and then so forth. But they all take payments in very different ways, and they mean different things. So for us to understand those industries, we go and rather than just arranging sales calls with these companies, we'll go and talk to them and we'll create content around them. Same as essentially what B2C brands do all the time, but we're doing it in B2B now, which tends to be what happens anyway. 5 to 10 years fluctuation between B2C and B2B. They just follow each other.
Or B2B tries. Some B2B
B2B,
like,
B2B tries. And I think when you get it right, you can get it right. But there's just so much negative connotation around content. And I think it's down to the measurability. You can't actually measure it. And we'll get into that in a moment.
Yeah, that's a really big subject,
But then what I also did was, having created a personal brand for myself in the industry, I then took my head of sales, which was Justin at the time, and still is, and Grant. And these guys are both incredibly knowledgeable about payments, but they were wasted in a way of what they were trying to win business was just by cold emails and cold calls and getting their teams to do the same thing. So I took Justin and Grant's profiles and I said, right, we're going to leverage this. We're going to leverage your knowledge. So we bought a camera. We started recording Justin's calls on Riverside FM, which is a podcasting platform. And we just started posting 3 to 4 times a week on LinkedIn. He's now, over the last 12 months, developed over 15,500 followers or something like that. Or is it Grant? It's for nearly 15. Justin's around 12 or 13. And they have become this kind of, I mean, we had a message from someone the other day saying, you and Grant are basically the payments sidemen.
Okay.
And that's almost what we've kind of created.
Brilliant.
And it's like, that's brilliant to see that. As a demand generation manager, that it was my strategy 18 months ago to get that message from someone in the industry is like, we've done something here.
Absolutely.
Something's happened and there's a shift. So that was been a really interesting journey. So that comes back to the demand generation manager role, which is how do we create demand for a brand versus how do we go to market with cold emails and cold calls, essentially. And that's where we are today.
So are you still is there still a sales element to your role, or are you just purely focused on the content side of things and just that demand generation?
Correct, just that.
So you sit more in what people would traditionally call the marketing,
the
branding and marketing side.
Because again, in B2B, the marketing function is very often just seen as a support function for sales and partnerships, which is just, I'm very much in a position that we all sit on the same level,
which is
because
great.
it has to be that way.
Absolutely.
It 100% has to be that way. So my day to day is sitting with Justin and Grant and their teams, understanding, right, well, who are you going after over the next 6 months? Who's your top top 10 prospects? And then how do I go out from a marketing angle and say, reach out to a CEO and say, we'd love to hear your story on our podcast. And I think your story and your product and services will be great for our audience.
Yeah.
No CEOs. I've only had one person turn me down for a podcast.
Well, yeah, because I'm not going to lie. If someone messages you and is like, we think you're great, we think your story's great, most people are going to be like, oh, thank you, stroke.
Yeah, exactly. Stroke that,
my ego feels great. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yes, of course. Like it's a really, it's a really clever way of doing it. And I can not relate in terms of exactly the same journey, but I remember being in sales roles and I was shocking, like cold calling about where'd you buy your IT from? Like, honestly, I was like, what am I doing? I've got a marketing degree. I've got so much bigger visions. And I was very similar to you. I was like, surely this isn't the way we do this. Like, what?
There has to be a better way.
Yeah, like people need to, I was always like, if I call people under pressure, I've got to make like 100 phone calls a day. There's no way they're going to get the best of me. Like, and the best way for me to sell is if they get the best of me, because I could be great at this if they actually see who I am and they actually get to know me and go, oh, that's Hannah from so-and-so, like, which is, you know, where the personal branding side of things is like blown up.
It's the reason we're here today is because I noticed that you did a podcast and I wanted to come and help and wanted to talk to you. And that's the reason we're here. I wouldn't have known of you if I wasn't on LinkedIn or you weren't posting consistently, you know, consistent good content on there.
Yeah. My mug just coming up in the feed all the time. Oh, there she is again. There she is again. But it works, right?
It does.
You're a prime example of it. I'm, you know, my brand is like really slowly grown. And then in the last 6 months, I'm starting to see it grow much, much quicker. But that's just, it takes time. Like, it takes consistency.
It does. It takes relationships.
We said earlier, didn't we? You briefly touched on how, you know, it's difficult to measure this sort of stuff, which is what often puts people off. I've probably had about 5 conversations in the last 2 weeks about this sort of thing. So before we just sort of like move into the next couple of bits, I want to ask you, like, how do you guys currently measure the success? Obviously, you talked about the guys' followings, you talked about, you know, the comments you're getting from people, the types of inquiries maybe you're getting, but what are the metrics that you guys are constantly tracking? Because I think people get quite lost in
I think there's the normal, right? You've got, I think for me, it's splitting it out into 2, which is quantitative and qualitative. You have to track the qualitative when it comes to brand. You can't just track quantitative. So when we track the quantitative stuff, it's the normal stuff, so impressions, profile views, following count, all that kind of stuff. But when we look at qualitative, it's exactly those messages. It's the messages where someone from our industry has messaged us and said, you are the payment sidemen. Brilliant. Send that to the CEO. But from a perspective of how do we actually measure what we're doing when it comes to attribution and tracking revenue, one thing that we do is we have a how did you hear about us box on our website.
Brilliant.
That's not a drop down. It's a mandatory field and it's free form text. So you can write whatever you want in there. That leads directly into an internal channel. So when those leads come through, executive sees it. So they see exactly where people are seeing where they're coming from. When we initially made that change, we started to see things that we never thought we'd see before, which is we've seen you on LinkedIn. We listened to your podcast. We even had one at acquired.com, which was my role before NomuPay, that because it was AC, so acquired, they were hearing about us on the Apple website because we're the top of the alphabetical order for Apple Pay users in the UK.
Wow.
We didn't know that. Wow. So that's something that we now leverage. But they didn't even know that existed.
Amazing.
So being able to have that on your website, just one form of measurability, I would just recommend that any B2B brand just has that anyway. Don't make it a drop down because people just select the top one. Make it free form. Mandatory, so they have to fill it out. It'll also reduce your spam.
For sure.
And just observe it for a month. See what comes through and analyze it. Feed the data into a spreadsheet. Categorize it if you want. Depending on what CRM you're using. It's a really easy thing to do, but a lot of marketers I think shy away from it because they're more fields, less leads.
No. If someone's really interested,
if they want to buy from you, they'll come to you.
They'll fill it out. That's a really good idea. Actually, we don't have that on our site, so I might I'll credit you if we do. I might add that to our site. We do it in the form of as soon as we have the first conversation with someone, it's always the first question we ask, other than you know, hello, how are you, and the niceties. It's just part of our process. So we know that today, I think we're probably sitting more at about 80% now of our new business has come through my LinkedIn, Paul's LinkedIn, the Brady Creatives LinkedIn.
It's true, right?
And we're only just now having to look at more sort of budgeted marketing. So we're looking at ads, we're looking at other things just to bring in other completely new people. But this business has grown organically, you could argue, just from pure content. So
and I think that what drives your ads is what works well organically.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has to do. It has to be that way, because why would you put money into something that doesn't work on its own?
Yeah.
Money should only boost organic content. It shouldn't be create an ad and put money behind it. It should be, let's create organic content through a podcast clip or whatever it might be, and then we'll push that if that hits home.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So we've talked about like actually what you're doing in the role. So at the beginning of the podcast, you said you haven't seen yourself as a creative person, or you wouldn't perceive yourself to be creative. But with the role you're doing at the moment, you're having to be creative in lots of ways. So if I could like push you a little bit on it, like where do you think creativity's showing up in your day-to-day life currently?
I think when I sit in meetings with Justin, Grant, James, our other sales guys, whatever it might be, I have this weird ability to be able to sit there and know something's good coming. Something's good is coming. I need to record it. I just have that inkling that just happens. And that's because I think one thing that makes me I'm not going to say a great marketer, but a good marketer is the fact that I've sold the products, and I understand how we're selling it. And I understand what the buyer is looking for. So that allows me to sit in a meeting and know what's happening in the conversation. And that's what I think makes me be able to be better at being creative, because I can sit there and capture the right moments with the right people. And I think one of the biggest things that I could probably recommend for any marketer is to go and sit on your sales calls for as often as you can. Go and spend more time with your sales teams, especially in B2B, even B2C. Understand how your product's sold, because that will make you a better marketer.
That's 100%. Brilliant advice. Really, really good advice. I used to be that really annoying, and there'll be loads of people out there that are this person currently, but that really annoying internal marketer that would like walk up to the salespeople and they'd be like, oh, hell, here she comes. Has she got a camera? Oh God, no. And I'd be like, guys, like, I'm trying to help you. Who's going to make more money here? Because it's not fucking going to be me, because I'm in marketing. It's going to be you.
Yes,
I was like, so
your commission.
I'm trying to help you make more commission, you ungrateful little butt. Like, that's what
But do you feel like it's the camera shy piece? Because I had to get around that with both Justin and Grant.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, I do think in particular when someone walks towards you with a camera and you really just don't, maybe you're having a crap day, maybe you're just not feeling great in yourself, like, that bit is hard, and that's a tough sell for marketers. But I didn't even have to have a camera in my hand. I'd just be walking towards them and they'd go, what's she going to ask me to do now?
What TikTok does she want me to make?
Yeah, it was. I mean, TikTok wasn't even around then. That's how old I am. But it was that whole, what is she going to ask me to do? And I was in a world where the business that I'm thinking about, when I first started working there in marketing, it was very much sales are here, marketing here. And a bit like you said earlier, marketing are a support function. And I was like, absolutely fucking not. Not over my dead body. Like, over my dead body. I was like, we're here to work together. Like, we 100%. Are part of sales and you are part of marketing. You are a marketing entity of this business. And over the years, we did evolve that and they came more close together. But I just used to get so angry and be like, you're going to earn more money. I'm not. I just have a flat salary, which I also think is an interesting thing in marketing. But
it is. But again, it comes down to the measurability. How do you measure marketing's impacts to an overall revenue of a company?
Yeah, exactly.
It has to come down to the attribution and how you measure it.
Proof.
And unless you get that right, because sales, and that's what I think why businesses don't do it, is the fact that if I, as an executive or a CEO or whatever it might be, or a head of sales, I know if I make 100 cold calls, I might book one meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can scale that. That's scalable.
Yeah.
But we can't scale if I create one piece of content. How many leads does that generate? I think that's you're asking the wrong question. Because it shouldn't be what you're asking in the first place anyway. But it should be. I think the epitome of marketing for me is being able to create digital relationships. And how do you do that?
Interesting.
That for me is being present. Consistently on a platform where you know people already are. And again, it goes back to attention. How do you leverage attention?
Such a good way of putting it for people who are listening as well, that maybe are, a lot of the people who listen to this are slightly earlier on in their career than we are, or are aspiring to be maybe in your position or maybe in my position one day. And so often people don't simplify things enough. And what you've said is so true. It's just we're all competing for attention of our audiences. So if you think of it in that as the simplest form, it gets a bit easier rather than going, right, what channel do I use? What this do I use? Like, where can I get their attention?
Yeah.
Is
and I think
a really
that
easy
comes
question.
then down to where I came into this thinking I'm not a creative, I'm a documenter. And I don't create content. I just leverage things that people do every day, all day, that they're already living.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're able, because I also believe, I think we can maybe have a conversation about this, is creativity. I feel like for me anyway, personally, would be hard for me to scale and do it all the time, every day for 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just documented everything I did, I'm scalable.
Yeah.
I can do as many meetings as I want, have the camera running.
Yeah.
I can record Justin's meetings. I can record all the personal brand meetings. I can record, I don't know, events, all these things. It's all things. Just document what's already going on in your life. And that would be another piece of advice that I'd give. If somebody wants to post on LinkedIn but doesn't know what to post, film your next meeting.
Yeah.
Just put your iPhone there and film your next meeting, and you'll have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And that's just how we have to think about what we're doing on social media. Is you don't have to, for me, create. You just have to document.
Yeah, another really good way of looking at it, actually. Particularly for people who have
struggle.
No idea. What do I do?
Yeah.
Because there are some people out there who've got loads of really brilliant creative ideas, and that's great. That's really lucky them. But there are lots of people who really struggle. So how did you get? What was the resistance like from Justin and Grant? And then initially, when it was like, right, guys, I'm going to film you. Here we go.
It was the same as everybody. It's the same as, well, why me? Again, that's the insecurity around content creation. It's the, and again, I said this on a clip on LinkedIn, which is, I think insecurity is just ego with a bit of makeup on.
Yeah.
And I think you have to set aside your ego and insecurities around what are people going to think about me? And go back to my childhood around rejection, right? You've got to get rid of that fear of failure. And the only way to do that is to do it.
Yeah.
Stop strategizing around how to do it and just execute it.
Yeah.
The more you post, the more you'll reduce that fear of failure.
Yeah.
But again, all of the pushback was around that. It was all just excuses, but really it boiled down to insecurity around what they wanted to talk about.
Discomfort, isn't it?
They always had, Justin's an incredible salesperson. Grant's amazing at partnerships and can also sell payments incredibly well.
Yeah.
That was not my issue. It's not their issue.
Yeah.
Their issue was being able to find a narrative and a program or a way to document it and then post it.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to do that, for me, you're creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot in creativity that's about finding solutions to things and actually thinking creatively and going, okay, well, if you're uncomfortable doing that, why don't we try this?
Yes.
And really working with the individual, particularly when it comes to personal brand. If you're supporting someone to develop their personal brand, it's very different when you're doing it yourself because you know your own boundaries, you know your own fears and stuff. Whereas when you're working with somebody, you've really got to get to know them, get to figure out how to work around them and know what battles to pick, what battles not to pick. So I think it's a really clever way that you've done it in terms of, I'm assuming when you suggested filming the meetings, did that feel easier for them?
Yeah, and I think when I put it to Justin in a way of, it's a case of, so when I said, I remember having the conversation with him around, you ask your salespeople to not be in the office because you want them to see customers. Because why is that? Because you want them to build relationships over time. Yeah. So why not get them to do that? And from your perspective, we need to get you to build a digital relationship. I'm only asking you to do what you're asking your team to do, but digitally. That's all I'm asking you to do. And when he thought of it like that, he's not an influencer, he's not a thought leader, he's just Justin Hannah that posts on LinkedIn. And now he's become a payments leader, and so is Grant.
The sideman of payments.
The sideman of payments. And that's it, right? And I think it can be that simple. And if we start to think of it as that simple, it really truly is. You just got to execute it rather than sit there and strategize around how many different ways we can do it. Just start recording your meetings and posting it, and don't care what people think.
And what's the worst that can happen? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work, but it will work, to be honest.
And I think that it will work.
It will work.
It will fundamentally work. If you're good at it.
And
it's
you
like
stick with it.
It's like the ROI of a football for David Beckham's billions of pounds. The ROI of a football for me, not very big. But the ROI of my personal brand for me is big. I know it is. Because I'm good at it. But fundamentally, it comes down to the skills of what. Are you good at it? If you're not good at it, people will tell you you're not good at it.
You'll soon know.
And that's the benefit and the downside of why people don't want to post is that it's a constant live feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback loop of, are you good at this? Because if you are, people will tell you. If you're not, you'll also be told.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that exposure and insecurity of being told whether you're actually good at something or not. And I mean, I've never really been called out on social media ever. I've been challenged, but the challenge is what creates content. Yeah. Because then that creates your next post.
And it boosts your posts when people are like,
more comments, the better. And the more, so sometimes you have to be somewhat controversial.
Yeah, yeah. I struggle with that, actually.
Being controversial.
Yeah, I find that quite hard because I'm not a particularly controversial person. And, I've seen people who aren't controversial really like forcing it.
Yeah.
And that's where you're like, but you don't believe... You can just feel it. If you're someone who's familiar with how content's created and how personal branding is developed, you can spot a mile off when someone's doing something that actually isn't fit with who they are. So I don't ever force it. Like I'm trying to be a bit more direct with some of the expectations I feel people need to understand in marketing, and some of that's come in, which is scary for me. Yeah. Like, it sounds silly, but I like people to like me. So like when I say things when I say things that are unpopular, I find that difficult, but actually dipping my toe in the water, people like it. Yeah. And people are like, thank you for saying that. I'm like, you're welcome.
Because I've got the exact same thoughts in my head sometimes, and that's where I'll go back to what I said earlier around using AI to help me form that narrative. So I would say to ChatGPT or through my AirPods or however I choose to communicate with it at that time, I'm thinking about this idea. Can you help me create a LinkedIn post that's slightly controversial, but also is delivered in an empathetic way? Yeah. Make sure you create line breaks and make sure it's easy for someone to digest on a mobile device on LinkedIn. Yeah. If you can be that specific, it will pump out something for you that is that you can work on the money, or you can work with. Yeah. And then you say, I like this bit, but can you maybe make this bit a bit more empathetic? And then add a really controversial line at the top to get people to read the rest. Yeah. Yeah. If you can start to use AI like that as an assistant versus create me a piece of content, you're on for a winner. Yeah.
See, it's coming out to me that your part of your creativity is finding a way of doing the things that actually you also find difficult. So like, you wouldn't class yourself as a copywriter. Yeah. That would tell me, I have the ideas, but how I execute them sometimes I struggle with. So I use AI to assist me. Like, that's creativity. You're going, right, I know that's not my lane, so I'm going to use this tool to help me. How you're tracking the analytics, how you're filming the meetings instead of doing loads of traditional talking to video pieces, So you definitely are.
Okay, I'll take it. I am creative.
You are, George. I am creative. My name's George and I am creative.
My name's George and I am creative. There you go. Clip that
bit. So at the moment then, where would you say you feel most creative?
In my current B2B role is where I feel most creative, in the morning. For some reason. For some reason, once that coffee hits in the morning for a good 3-4 hours, that's when I'll probably write my LinkedIn stuff. Yeah. And that's when I'll feel the most creative. But again, I often don't think that I'm creative in the moment. I have to feel like if I record myself doing something, I will then reuse that and then find a way to be creative around how I use it. So, for example, if you go onto my LinkedIn, you'll see that there's a lot of photos of me. They're not photos, they're screenshots of recordings, which is a meta, by the way. Give that a go. It's brilliant. You get some great photos. So, taking a video of what I've done, finding a way to take a screenshot of that, put it into Canva, finding a way, like there was one I did the other day where I'm sat there on my phone. I used iMessage and stuff like that. Like that, I suppose that's probably where I feel a little bit creative. Whereas a case of how do I display a message in an image format and then give context why? Because I want to capture people's attention. But I also want to put it in a way that they see things every day. So everyone's always looking at iMessage. So I feel like that will resonate with them and go, that's an iMessage. Should I read it? And it's I think Canva makes me creative. CapCut makes me creative. But going back to the narrative is the case of I need to film myself doing something, and then I'll be like, I can make that into something. Versus I'm going to be creative right now.
You'll capture and document out of habit now. And then it's what you do with it afterwards.
And then I'll spruce it up a little bit.
I'm a bit similar. I don't do much sprucing because I'm actually probably more creative in in how I say things. Like. That's where mine comes in, and then I let the like visual creativity. I let the proper people do that. I do a bit. I had to do a video for a client the other day, and George walked back into the office when I was editing it, and I was like, George, don't look at my screen. And he was like, no, I like it. And it was one of those videos where there was only so much I could do with it.
Yeah.
It needed to be turned around really quickly, and George was like, nah, you've done a pretty solid job of that, Hannah. I was like,
yes,
George, thank you.
That's it. That's it. Clock off
like,
for the day.
Day
done.
made. Yeah, I'm done. I am done. I'm cooked. And so you mentioned that you've read like quite a lot of books. You've done a lot on sort of personal development. I'm really big into this, to the point where I've had to sort of like rein it back a little bit, because I was like, must get better at this, must get better at that, and it got a bit. I got almost like a bit addicted to it, and it wasn't doing me any good. But what else do you do to work on your craft, so to speak, or to keep yourself up to speed with what's going on, like the Spotify feed that we just talked about and things like that? How do you make sure you're on top of things?
I mean, so much of that comes through my LinkedIn feed. TikTok, the algorithm's got me nailed. It just serves me all sorts of stuff that's brilliant. But I listen to, I mean, podcast wise, I'm a bigger podcast listener than I am a reader. I don't like reader, and I think that comes down to my academic side of things. I don't like reading. But I will listen religiously to Gary Vaynerchuk's audio experience. I'll listen to Stephen Bartlett a lot when he comes to his stuff. Revenue Vitals by Chris Walker, that comes down to the demand generation side, so attribution, how do you measure that? All that stuff comes under that. And then just a book that I have actually just read, which is Day Trading Attention by Gary Vaynerchuk.
Day Trading Attention.
Yeah.
I don't follow Gary V that much, and people are always like, Hannah, what? I know what he's about, and I have him on socials and stuff, and I do see it, but I haven't like, what's the word? Fallen fully into like the Gary V world. So like from your perspective, just again for people who are listening who are similar to me and don't really follow him religiously, like what do you think's Gary V's biggest sort of value as a content creator? What has he taught you would say that's been most valuable?
I mean, he's one of the biggest things that I've taken from him is that vulnerability is not a weakness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that if you can display vulnerability within your content, you're going to hit and you're going to reach far bigger audiences than if you try and be polished and you try and be, granted, he posts 100 times a day across a various amounts of platforms, but he got a team of 30 to 50 people doing it for him.
Yeah.
But it all stems back to the same thing, which is he's just documenting every single day of his life.
Yeah.
And that, I get it. He's good, right?
Yeah.
There's no way around that. If you document everything of my life, it wouldn't be very good. But he's good at what he talks about. He talks to some really cool people.
Yeah.
And he just documents it. And his team repurpose that in so many different ways. And that's the model that Chris Walker's then done with his Revenue Vitals. He's also, and it's a model that I'm very much creating in the B2B space, which is let's film as much as possible and delete what we don't want.
Yeah.
Rather than let's pick things to film and put pressure on them, put people out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
They don't like that.
Interesting.
Let's actually get them where they're comfortable, which is on a sales call, in a meeting where they're actually pitching the product.
Yeah. Prattling around in the office. Doing all these kind of things that we as humans do all day, every day. Yeah.
Let's capture that. If we don't use it, we don't use it.
Yeah.
But why try and stage something that people are going to feel uncomfortable, they're not going to want to do, and they're not going to be their natural self? Because again, that doesn't display vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah. Love it. Very well answered. Because I just don't know enough about him people ask me and I'm like, yeah, I see his stuff, but I've had friends that have like really fully embraced like who he is, what he's about, a bit like you. I like embrace the model that he uses. And I just don't think I got caught in the wave of it. So I admire what he's doing and I think his content's great. I'm just not like a super fan. But I'm also, I like him. I admire him.
Yeah, I listen to a lot. I just listen to a lot of his stuff, and I think it comes across in the way that evidently the way I do things. And I've listened to him for a long time, and I think he was somebody that really, again, going back to my childhood and what I did as a college and outside of it, and kind of fear of rejection, fear of failure. He does talk about that. He did talk about that a long time ago, and he still does today because it's still a real problem. And it's still something that I come across all the time when talking to people about LinkedIn, is the fact that, and LinkedIn's a little bit different because I feel like you're also creating content that somebody that might be your future boss sees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if you're an executive, you don't want to upset investors, or you don't want to upset whatever it might be, right? Competition.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn's a little bit different. So, but I genuinely, as long as you're not an idiot,
exactly,
you're going to be fine.
And
there's plenty of idiots out there. I'm not going to say there isn't,
Yeah.
but don't be an idiot. Be yourself. Share things you're learning, and just learn.
Yeah.
Build yourself in public.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I've done it for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And just everybody should
Same.
just build in public.
Yeah, exactly the same as you. I was posting when I was in previous roles, and my managers at the time or my colleagues were like, "Oh, here she goes again. Like, she's been at a networking event. Who cares?"
I got it so many times.
Like,
I'll do the LinkedIn bit, but make sure you hit your call number.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cheers.
All right, thanks. And people just not really getting it.
Yeah.
And then I always sort of in the back of my mind knew that I'd have my own business at some point. So I wasn't really, this is going to sound really bad, I wasn't building it for them.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Like I wasn't.
It's 100%. And that's a fear of a corporation.
Yeah.
When it comes to personal branding.
I've never
they're
said
fearful.
It.
That's why brands don't want to do it.
Yeah, don't get too good at it, Hannah.
Don't get too good at it because you might actually
You might
want to
get
make money
poached.
out of it or get poached.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, I think, with corporations, it's the selling of fear.
Yeah, we get a lot with them when we talk to sort of managing directors about helping them upskill their team and helping their team really develop their personal brands. Still to this day, the biggest fear is, but what if they get poached by our competition? And I'm always like, if you're worried about your team getting poached because they're starting to post on LinkedIn, you've got bigger problems. Like if they're poachable, they're poachable, and it's probably because you're not doing some of the bigger things right. Yep. So don't worry about their LinkedIn content. Worry about the fundamentals. Like, what are you looking after them? Basically,
it's funny because the corporations want all of the upside of somebody doing it on LinkedIn, but they want zero of the risk.
Don't like the risk. Yeah, so true.
They want none of the risk.
Yeah,
but they want they want people to do it.
Yeah. How can we keep them forever?
Yeah. How can we keep them forever? How can we lock them in? But it's selling fear. If you don't hit your target, this might happen.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, this will happen. Don't do that because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
It's just selling of fear, and
not cool.
I just don't like it.
Yeah, no, not cool. I say to the guys, because we're big on from interview, we talk about their personal brands, and we're like, a big thing for us is that you develop your personal brand here because it's part of who we are as a business. It benefits us as a business, but actually, more fundamentally, it will benefit you.
Yeah.
And George will probably be wincing in the corner because I'm on at George. I'm on at George about his, because it's good for George, it's good for Lois, it's good for George alike, and also it helps people associate them with their strengths and their skills and what they're good at.
Yep.
And if they were to leave the Brady Creative one day, I want them to have an audience, a following, a network.
Yeah.
So it's, there's selfish elements to it, of course, but even if those selfish elements didn't exist, I'd be recommending that they did it. So
and I think from a videographer's perspective, addressing George here, is a case of that.
Sorry, George.
if we haven't already, we're about to go on an absolute marathon of videographers being just hired.
Yeah.
Across all organizations everywhere, because I literally posted it yesterday.
Yeah.
The next revenue and pipeline generating role in your business should be a videographer.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not another salesperson.
Yeah.
It should be someone that's willing to capture content around the office, and everybody should be involved in it. And I genuinely think that come, 5 to 10 years time, a videographer will be a huge staple point in even B2B companies now, not just B2C.
Yeah, I agree. Hence why
100%.
we hired George. Ta-da!
Good job, George. Well done,
I agree. I absolutely agree. So at this moment in time then, what would you say your favourite creative outlet is? As someone who doesn't deem themselves to be creative.
My favourite creative outlet. I really do enjoy LinkedIn.
Yeah,
but
same.
when I bring that, nothing compares to creating golf content for me. I love creating golf.
We're going to talk about that.
I love creating golf content, whether it's for the academy or for me and my personal Instagram. I just and that comes from, again, just documenting lessons.
Yeah.
I've taken that into my personal side and stuff like that. I don't go to the range and think I'm going to create content today.
Yeah.
I just go and record my swings, and then I'll do a voiceover or do whatever. And it's just taking that model, the same thing, and documenting how I've developed golf. You can go back 4 years and see my golf swing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it because it's not a good one.
Well, I mean, you're off 3, George, so don't really want to talk about our golf handicaps. Makes me very sad. But tell us about the academy then, while we're on that. So talk to us about what the academy is, who the guys are that are involved, and what you're doing.
Yeah. So the FGA, which stands for Forgoine Golf Academy. So Forgoine is the last name of the owner.
Yeah.
And he was a professional golfer.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah.
He plays on tour. His brother Giorgio is also the head pro down at Northampton.
Yeah.
Delapre, if you wanted to go check it out. They've also got one in Miami, in Florida.
Okay, cool.
So that was where Mick, the owner, played a lot of his golf.
Yeah.
So he started out there and then brought one over to the UK. And then essentially we're built around with a modern tuition. So a lot of golf academies, you have to be PGA asserted. Whereas these guys play on clutch, they play on a lot of lower mini tours.
Yeah.
But the coaching is just as good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a clutch pro coach for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And he's been the best I've ever had.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Because again, he simplifies it for me. He makes things a lot easier for me to understand.
Yeah, he's in the game as well.
Going back to my non-analytical brain, it just helped me feel something.
Yeah.
And I'll learn it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, so I'm on board as their brand director.
Yeah.
Completely unpaid. It's free.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for me as well, is that's opened up so many doors for me in the golf world that I feel like if somebody wants to, people don't want to give their time away for free.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you've got, and I get it, not if you need to make money, there's a difference, right? But if you have something that you're passionate about and you have a skill that you think you're valuable to that business and that creative, go and offer it.
Go
and offer it for free, do what you can for them, and just learn as you go. And that's all I did 3 years ago. I said, let me run your socials. Let me be a bit creative around this. And now we're onto a lot of interesting projects that I can't quite share yet, but we're onto some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. I think it's a big one, that whole like not giving you time. Like if it's something you're passionate about, like you said, like it's opened up so many doors for you personally. There's been some great opportunities. Like you caddied for one of the guys, didn't you? In a professional,
fantastic experience. Yeah.
You look so pro, George. I'm not gonna lie. In the photos, I'm like, whoa, give him pro caddy vibes there.
Pro caddy vibes, yeah. But no, and that's one of the opportunities that was opened up. Now, and you just don't know what's going to happen through people. No. And I think if you can leverage people and you've got a good personality and you're willing to go and dedicate a few hours of your time a week to a local thing that you're passionate about, you never know what might happen.
To it, yeah. 100%. And pure feel good factor as well, right? It's like they always say like people who do a lot for charity and who give their time and who donate and do a lot of like philanthropic things, for want of a better word. Like there is an element of it that is of course selfish, because you go, oh, that makes me feel good. Like I feel good for doing it, and you love golf.
100%. So it matches up and it worked out great.
Yeah. When you're back from us, we'll have to get around and
we will.
Although
you don't want to play with me. So
3 handicapper, 13.6 handicapper, slightly. I feel like I'm doing really well, and I keep meeting other golfers, and I'm like, "What do you play off?" And they're like, 2, 3. I'm like, got a long way to go. But no, I'm proud of my golf game. It's done. I've done well. Not quite as well as you, but
you should be. It's a one of the I personally think it's the toughest game in the world.
Yeah, it's so difficult.
I think you've got to get a ball that big into a hole that big across 400 yards in 4 shots, whilst trying to battle all the mental things that come with the game, which is the worst part.
Yeah, the elements as well, like the weather.
And the weather, all the elements, everything. And I think one thing that comes from caddying is just understanding that, oh my God, the mental side of the game is more important than the actual swing element. Yeah,
your mindset as you go through those 18 holes has got to be rock solid. When
you've got people on every hole watching you, you've got pressure putts that might only be as wide as this table.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I have no chance. I said
like this way, not this way.
It's not going in. I'd be like, it's not going in. Do you think it's going in? My caddy would be like, no. I said to my dad, I played on Sunday, and my dad like always messages me to ask me how I got on, because my dad like loves that I've got into golf. It sort of runs in the male side of our family. And he was like, how did you get on, Han? And I was like, Dad, not gonna lie, tee to green, Coventry's Nelly Corder. Didn't miss a shot. Honestly, that's my strength. Like I can really strike the ball. And then on the green, I was like, Dad, I was like Coventry's Stevie Wonder with a rolling pin. It was really bad.
Yeah.
It was really. It was not my day.
It
was not my day. But I could talk about golf all day long, but we're not going to do that, because that's not what you're here for, listeners. Sorry. Anyone who loves golf, we love golf too. We do. My last couple of questions then is sort of, in fact, I'll stick with the last one, is what would be your main advice? You've given a couple of really good like little nuggets as we've gone along, but for anyone who's listening who is maybe a little bit like where you were when you were a bit younger and you were doing that sales, that marketing, what are they called again? The brand that you sold for when you were younger and all your friends.
Herbalife.
Yeah. So if they're trying something that's like standing them out from their friends a little bit and they're getting a bit of grief, but they know that it's right for them, like what would your advice be for people who are just sort of aspiring maybe a bit bigger than the group that they're surrounded by?
I think it's about connecting with people that, or just making sure that you're being your authentic self at heart, because that's always key.
Yeah.
But actually going and connecting and being and cutting out negativity in your life is a big one for me. It's what had to do.
Yeah.
Get it out of your life. It's not going to benefit you in any way.
Yeah, yeah.
Make negativity loves company. It's a cliche saying, but it's true.
Yeah.
Go and find someone that is on the right track, that wants to do certain things and similar. You know, join LinkedIn. Go and talk to people. You know, I'll happily accept a message from someone and have a phone call or a video call with someone that's like this, that is in that position.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super, super important that you talk to the right people and know that they're out there, because especially when you're surrounded by negativity, it's all you ever think is around.
Yeah.
And you think, where are these people? You see them on social media. Where are they? Go and message them, because if they are truly themselves that they show on social media, they'll reply to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not Gary Vaynerchuk or Stephen Bartlett, but go and find someone that's posting positive things and go and have a chat with them.
Yeah.
Go and meet them for coffee. Look in your local area. Go and meet people.
Yeah.
Get in front of people. Build some relationships. And honestly, it's one thing that I did in sales is, if you want to work in sales, I'm a prime example. If you don't need to go to university or anything like that to be a marketer. I think if you can take what you're good at, leverage it. Again, mine was emotional intelligence and people.
Yeah. See, your mum was right.
My mum was right to a degree.
Yeah.
If you can take that and find a way to leverage it, I think you're going to be, you know, pretty good, and you're going to be well off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd fundamentally start by just reaching out and having some conversations with people you don't know.
Yeah.
But make sure they're the right people.
Yeah. Love that. Good advice. Okay, you ready for the quick fire?
Oh God, yeah, go on then.
The quick fire that never ends up being quick fire. So question 1 is, if you could invite 3 creatives to dinner, who would they be?
3 creatives to dinner. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got to be on there.
Yeah,
surely.
Gary Vaynerchuk. I would probably go with Stephen Bartlett and Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast, yeah, great example. Yeah,
and I think there too. Again, it's not going to be quick fire, but what's interesting, I feel like, about Mr. Beast is I feel like he's an ultimate creative.
Yeah, yeah.
Like an ultimate creative, like him and Dude Perfect. Ultimate creatives.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Gary Vaynerchuk and Stephen Bartlett's got the creative side of his podcast, but then he's also got Behind the Diary.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's his document side.
Yeah, which I prefer now. I have to say, I prefer Behind the Diary.
I will watch every episode.
Yeah.
So that's why I've selected Mr. Beast there, because I feel like I've got 2 documenters and I've got a full-on creative.
Yeah, those ideas, like where.
There would be my 3. My pen would run out.
Yeah.
On that.
That'd be a very interesting table.
My pen would run out.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like stacks of notepads. Yeah. One for each person. The second one, a little bit out there, but if your work was edible, what would it taste like?
Oh God. Olives.
Olives.
Olives. And I'd say olives because, again, going back to my mum, when she took me out for dinner, she said, you will eat an olive because it is something you will like when you're older. And I feel like that's something, like my career has been something that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And it's something that you have to just be consistent at.
Yeah, even if you don't like the taste
even
of it.
If you don't
keep
like it,
and
even if you get in the negative feedback and you don't like it, keep going and going and going and going, because one day it will work out for you. And now I love olives.
Yeah, very refined food as well, to be fair.
It's a very refined food.
Like that one. We've had all sorts, like absolutely all sorts. And then the last one, which this is the one that people actually seem to really struggle with, is there a song or a genre of music that you think would summarize your sort of career journey so far, or your sort of story so far?
I'm going to say country music.
Yeah, you're really into... I can't believe we've not touched on this.
I love country music.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's making a massive, massive kind of like big up in the UK right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like over the last 2 years is where my career has really gone straight through. And people are starting to actually understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's resonating with my right people. I'm now getting messages from other roles and stuff like that around the world about it. And I feel like country music is something that I've found, and it's been, it's bloody hell, it's gone boom in the UK at the moment, and I've loved it. And I feel like that's something that's relatively on the same par as my career in regards to movement. Nice.
Where does the love of country come from? Is it in your family, or is it?
No, it's something that was introduced to me by my girlfriend.
Oh, cool.
And we went and found, we've gone to Morgan Wallen live, we've gone to Nashville, we've seen Darius Rucker live, we've seen all of the big ones. I think we've seen live somewhere. And that's just where it came from. It was something that I when she first told me, I was like, country music, like Dolly Parton or something like that. I was like, no. But then I heard Morgan Wallen and I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. I like this music.
Yeah, it's quite soulful country music.
It's quite
which
soulful.
People don't
it's actual music. And I think when you actually go and see the people live, they're actually singers.
Yeah.
They're good because they've had to be in Broadway at some point in their career singing to nobodies. So they've had to be good. Yeah. And it's always a good show.
Love it. Country music for the win.
For the win.
What an end. We'll just mic drop on that, shall we, George? George is not into country music, I can confirm. What's your genre, George?
Heavily auto-tuned rap.
Yes.
Yeah, whenever George's songs come on, we've got one of those like fused Spotify playlists where it's just everyone's music. And anytime one of George's songs comes on, he's like, skip it. Skip it. You're going to hate it.
You won't like it.
You're going to hate it. But no, on a serious note, thanks for coming on, George.
It's been
great. Really good to get to know you. And you're actually flying to Australia tomorrow. So thanks.
I fly at 6 a.m. tomorrow to Japan. I'm there for 3 days. And then I'm in...
Oh, amazing.
I'm in Australia for a family wedding. Then I go via Bali on the way home.
Oh, amazing.
So it's a all-round 3.5 week trip, which will be nice.
Complete break as well. Like no
work. I am working for probably about a week and a half of it.
Yeah. Oh, well, enjoy. Have a great time.
Yeah, I've got a lot of videos to edit.
Yeah, okay, fair. Get on that CapCut. Sorry again, George. Yeah. But yeah, have a great time, and we'll get around in when you're back, and you can embarrass me on the golf course.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you're doing
George.
some great things here, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.